The soft and enveloping music filled the air as I watched the party in Notting Hill. The glow of the lights reflected on the smiling faces of London's elite, and I felt somewhat out of place, as if I were just passing by. My mind, usually occupied with architecture projects, now wandered, intrigued by the vibrant atmosphere around me. Then my eyes landed on her, Beatriz. She was in a corner of the room, her red dress standing out amidst a sea of sober attire. Her light brown hair cascaded in soft waves over her shoulders, and an enchanting smile lit up her face. There was something about her presence that drew me in like a magnet. I got lost in her eyes, which seemed to shine with an intensity of their own, reflecting a mix of joy and mystery. I decided I needed to approach her. My heart racing, I searched for a break in the crowd, and in a moment, our gazes met. Her smile widened, and I knew I had a chance. "Hi, I'm Oliver," I said, extending my hand. "You're the most interesting guest at this party." "Beatriz," she replied, shaking my hand firmly. "And you're an architect, right? I've heard that architecture is a form of art that you live in." "That's right." I laughed a little nervously. "But I'd say that most of the time, it's more about deadlines and budgets than pure art." She laughed, a musical sound that echoed in my ears. "I think that applies to many things in life, doesn't it? What should be beautiful often turns into a matter of survival." "That's true," I agreed, intrigued by her perspective. "But what about you? What do you do besides being the most stunning woman at this party?" Beatrice tilted her head, and a shadow passed over her gaze, as if a distant memory swept through her. "Oh, I have my own dreams. I'm looking for something more meaningful." "Meaningful? Like what?" I asked, curiosity consuming me. "Well, I'm trying to find my place in the world, you know?" She looked down for a moment before meeting my gaze again. "Life can be a bit complicated sometimes." I couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more behind her words. What could be so complicated? But before I could ask, she smiled again, and the conversation flowed naturally. We talked about our interests, our passions. Each shared laugh seemed to draw an invisible bond between us. The party went on, but I was completely absorbed in her company. Time seemed to stand still. When the last toast was made, I knew I had to ask for her number. The desire to see her again was overwhelming. "Beatriz," I started hesitantly. Can I ask for your number?" She hesitated for a brief moment, as if weighing her words. My heart raced in my chest. "Of course," she finally replied, pulling her phone from her pocket. As she typed, I couldn't help but smile. "I hope this isn't a dream," I murmured, half joking, half serious. "It's not, Oliver. It's just the beginning," she replied, handing me her phone with a sparkle in her eyes. The party came to an end, and I watched her leave, each of her steps echoing in my mind. As I walked home, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Beatriz. The name still sounded like a soft melody in my mind, and while the night had been magical, there was a sense that something deeper and perhaps darker lay beneath the surface of her beauty and charm. I felt that night would change everything in my life, but I had no idea what was to come. A mix of excitement and apprehension accompanied me until I finally reached my apartment. I closed my eyes, recalling her stunning smile. Life, I thought, is about to get much more interesting. In the days that followed that magical night in Notting Hill, life seemed to take an unexpected and delightful turn. Beatriz became a constant presence in my thoughts, and each encounter we had felt like a new chapter in a romance I never knew I wanted. It was as if the world around us had become a backdrop for our story, a movie that only the two of us were watching. One afternoon, we decided to meet at a cozy cafe in central London. The aroma of fresh coffee and newly baked pastries filled the air, creating a perfect atmosphere for another of our conversations. Beatriz was radiant, her smile lighting up the space. I watched her, enchanted, as she spoke about her latest readings. "Have you read To Kill a Mockingbird?" she asked, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "No, but I've heard great things about it. It's about prejudice, right?" I replied, trying to keep up with her energy. "Exactly. The way the story is told is so powerful. I feel like we need to talk about these issues, don't you think? Absolutely. Literature has that power to make us reflect. I agreed, admiring her passion. As we talked, I realized that Beatriz had a depth I had never encountered in anyone before. She was full of life, full of ideas, and I felt drawn to each and every one of them. But amid all that light, a shadow began to form in my mind, an unease I couldn't ignore. During our meetings, she often changed the subject when something more personal came up. It was as if there was a wall she wouldn't let me cross. One day, while we were walking through the park, the sun filtered through the trees, creating a spectacle of light and shadow around us. The weather was perfect, but the weight of a question began to form in my chest. Beatriz, you've mentioned a few times about bad decisions from the past.
What do you mean by that?
I asked hesitantly. She hesitated, her gaze drifting for a moment to a distant place. Oh, it was just a confusing phase of my life. We all have our challenges, don't we? She replied, forcing a smile that couldn't hide the sadness in her eyes. Of course, but you can count on me, right? You don't have to carry that alone. She looked at me, and for a brief moment, I thought she might open up. But like a passing breeze, her vulnerability vanished. Let's talk about happier things. How is your architecture project going? I followed her, trying not to press. But the curiosity burned inside me, and the seed of doubt began to grow. What was she hiding? One night, we decided to go to a bar near my apartment. The place was cozy, with live music and an intimate vibe. I watched her laugh at something I said, and my heart filled with joy. But something changed when I went to the bathroom. Upon returning, I noticed Beatriz in a dark corner, her face illuminated only by the light of her phone. She seemed nervous, and when I approached, I saw her quickly hang up the call. "Hi, how are you?" I asked, trying to hide the discomfort I felt. "Oh, hi. Yes, everything's great." Her voice was a bit louder than usual, and I noticed she wasn't looking me in the eyes. "Were you talking to someone?" The question slipped out before I could think twice. "It was just a friend. Nothing serious." Her answer seemed rehearsed, and a wave of unease washed over me. "A friend? Why did you seem so tense?" Beatriz bit her lip, hesitating. I don't like talking about these things in public. Let's dance." She changed the subject again, but the unease I felt only grew. What was behind that call? What was so important that she didn't want to share? Trying to push the doubts away, I threw myself into the music and the dance, but the tension lingered. I had the impression I was descending into a dark tunnel, and the light at the end was becoming increasingly distant. Every time I looked at Beatriz, the woman of my dreams, I also saw a dark side that I couldn't decipher. With that, the need to uncover the truth grew within me. The soft light of the room illuminated Beatriz's face, but I couldn't focus on her beauty. My hands trembled slightly as I tried to formulate the words that needed to be said. After weeks of smiles and shared moments, there was a shadow hanging between us, and I was determined to confront it. "Beatriz," I began, my voice faltering a bit. "We need to talk about what happened that night at the bar." I can't stop thinking about it." She hesitated, her eyes drifting away from mine, as if searching for an escape. "Oliver, it was just a phone call. There's nothing to worry about." "But there was something in your expression," I insisted, trying to stay calm. "You looked nervous, like you were hiding something." "I'm not a stranger in your life, Beatriz. I care about you." She took a deep breath, finally meeting my gaze. "Okay, Oliver. If you really want to know, I have a troubled past." The words came out as a whisper, but still heavy with weight. There were relationships that didn't end well, and some complications with the law. That's all I can say. A knot formed in my stomach. Complications with the law? Are you talking about serious problems? It's not what you think. It was a mistake, a phase of my life I'd like to forget. I'm not that person anymore. She was almost pleading for understanding. "Beatriz, I want to understand, but this changes everything between us," I said, feeling the urgency of being honest. "How can I trust you if I don't know the truth?" She stepped closer, gently touching my arm. "Oliver, I don't want you to see me as a criminal or something like that. I'm just a woman trying to move on. And what if someone from your past comes back to find you? What if that puts you in danger? I don't know if I can handle that. Frustration seeped into my voice. I promise I'm doing my best to keep my past away from you. Please, don't distance yourself from me because of this. Her eyes were filled with tears, and my heart broke at seeing her vulnerability. I don't want to distance myself, Beatriz. I want to stay. Let's face this together. The words came out softer, as if I were convincing myself as much as her. She smiled, a timid smile that lit up her face. Thank you, Oliver. You don't know how much this means to me. In that moment, everything felt lighter. I pulled her close, wrapping her in a tight embrace. The warmth of her body against mine brought temporary relief, as if the world outside had vanished. I love you, Beatriz. And I believe we can overcome anything. I love you too, she replied, her whisper filled with sincerity. The intimacy of that moment made me feel that, despite the ghosts of the past, there was still hope for us. The next morning, as we had coffee, the atmosphere was charged with a new energy. I felt we were more connected than ever, but Tom's warning echoed in my mind. A loyal friend, always concerned for my well-being. You know it's not just love that matters, right? He had said in a recent conversation. Safety is important too, Oliver. I shook my head, trying to ignore the worry. Tom, you don't know Beatriz like I do. She's a good person. But what if her past comes back to haunt her? And you? Tom insisted, his expression serious. Love isn't enough if you're in danger. I'll take care of her, I replied, feeling a mix of determination and fear. And I won't leave her alone. But the words couldn't dispel the unease that settled in my heart. What was I willing to risk for love? The idea of losing Beatriz terrified me, but the possibility of getting caught in a cycle of problems was equally frightening. As we returned to our daily lives, I realized that life went on, but the shadow of Beatriz's past wouldn't let me be at peace. Love united us, but the uncertainty of the future loomed like a threatening cloud. And yet, I couldn't help but believe that together, we could find a way to face any storm that came our way. Clenching my fists, I took a deep breath as I watched Beatriz walk away. At that point, it wasn't just her past that haunted me, but the uncertainty of the present. The mysterious calls she received, the furtive glances she exchanged with strangers, all of it began to weave a web of distrust around me. But at the same time, something inside me refused to believe she could betray me. That woman, who had captured my heart and mind, could not be capable of something so vile. That night, as the cold wind of London whispered through the window of my apartment, I decided I needed to understand better what was going on. After much thought, an idea struck me. Follow Beatriz. If there was something dark hiding behind her charming smile, I had to find out. With a knot in my stomach and my mind racing, I got dressed and left, determined to unravel the mystery. I followed her through the streets of Notting Hill, keeping a safe distance, but close enough to see her. The city buzzed with the glow of street lamps and the distant murmur of voices, but all of that felt far away to me. My attention was entirely focused on Beatriz. She seemed nervous, looking around as if she were being watched. My heart raced when I saw her enter a dark bar by the sidewalk. I waited a few minutes before going in. The atmosphere was enveloped in a dim light that made it hard to distinguish faces. I sought a corner where I could observe without being seen. What I saw left me paralyzed. Beatriz was talking to a man who, by his posture and clothing, seemed anything but trustworthy. The tension in the air was palpable. I could see the anxiety on her face as the man gestured insistently. You can't keep going like this, Beatriz. I heard the man say, his voice low but filled with urgency. I know, but I can't just step out of a scene. Beatriz's voice trembled, and my heart sank. What did this mean? I decided I couldn't stay there, watching that scene. With my heart in my throat, I left the bar, feeling that something was very wrong. The walk home felt longer than ever, each step weighing on me as if I were carrying an invisible burden. The image of Beatriz talking to that man tormented me, and an avalanche of questions flooded my mind. What had she not told me? What was happening that I didn't know? Arriving home, emptiness took over me. Instead of sleeping, I spent the night turning over my thoughts. When dawn finally broke, I knew I needed to confront her. When I found her, I said decisively, "Beatriz, we need to talk." She looked at me, her expression of surprise quickly transforming into a mask of concern. "What happened, Oliver? You look pale. I saw you last night with that man. What's going on?" My voice was firm, but inside me, a storm of emotions was unfolding. Beatriz hesitated, her eyes drifting away. I could feel the tension in the air. "Oliver, she began, but I interrupted her. "I need you to be honest with me. I'm tired of secrets. What are you hiding?" She took a deep breath, seeming to struggle with her words. "It's not what you think. I'm not cheating on you." "Then what were you doing with him?" My voice came out louder than I intended, but the pain and confusion were consuming me. "He is someone from my past." Her voice was now almost a whisper. "I didn't want you to know." The weight of the revelation fell upon me. Something inside me wanted to believe she was innocent, but doubt began to take root. "Beatriz, please tell me the truth. What's going on?" She looked me in the eyes, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. "I promised I wouldn't talk about it, but—" She hesitated, biting her lips. "It could be dangerous." "Dangerous?" My heart raced. I wanted to know, but at the same time, the fear of the unknown terrified me. "I'm here for you, Beatriz. Whatever it is, we can face it together." She lowered her head, and I realized she was struggling with her own emotions. "I just don't want to involve you in this." Her voice was choked. Those words echoed in me. Whatever was happening, I knew it was more than just a personal challenge for Beatriz. And suddenly, the idea of distancing myself from her became unbearable. "I can't just stay out of it. You are important to me. We need to figure this out together, no matter what it is." She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. But at the same time, the shadow of her past still loomed over us, and uncertainty continued to be a barrier between us. The future seemed uncertain, but the determination to uncover the truth began to solidify within me. The truth felt like an unbearable weight in my chest. The image of the man Beatriz had met replayed in my mind like an unending echo. What did he want from her? What had she done? The questions swirled in my head as I tried to make sense of it all. My heart raced, and anguish increased with each passing second. I decided I needed to confront her, even though the fear of losing everything we had built was overwhelming. That night, I went to Beatriz's apartment. The atmosphere was tense, and the smell of the dinner she was preparing filled the air, but I couldn't distract myself. She greeted me with a smile, but soon realized something was wrong. "Hi, Oliver. Are you okay?" she asked, concern evident in her eyes. "We need to talk, Beatriz." My voice came out firmer than I expected. "Sure, what happened?" She sat on the sofa and I followed, sitting across from her. "I saw you with that man." The words came out as a breath, and the silence that followed was deafening. Beatriz froze, her expression shifting quickly from surprise to defensiveness. "Oliver, I can explain," she began, her voice trembling. "Explain what? That you're meeting someone from your past? That this man is a criminal?" I couldn't hold back the anger and pain that consumed me. "This isn't just a mistake, Beatriz. This is a betrayal." "It's not what you're thinking," she replied, raising her arms in a gesture of frustration. "I didn't want you to know. He is not what you think. I just asked for help." "Help for what? What does he want from you?" With each question, my heart shattered a little more. "Please, Oliver, let me explain." She took a deep breath, her eyes filled with tears. "This man, he was my partner in something very bad in the past. Something I wanted to forget. I thought I had gotten rid of him, but he came back looking for me, and I am being threatened." "Threatened? How so?" I couldn't understand. The revelation left her vulnerable, and I saw her internal struggle. He said that if I didn't help him, he would do something to you." Desperation filled her voice, paralyzing me. "I didn't want you to know to protect you. I thought I could handle this on my own." Anger and sadness began to mix into a confusion of emotions. So, you decided to meet with him? Is that how you protect someone you love? I had no choice, she shouted, rising from the sofa. If you knew everything that happened, you wouldn't love me anymore. I am a victim, Oliver. And I am what? What am I in this story? Just a spectator of your life full of secrets. I stood up too, frustration taking over me. Please don't do this. I love you. I just didn't know how to deal with it. He threatened me, and I thought that if I did what he wanted, you would be safe. I don't want to lose you. She moved closer to me, tears streaming down her face. I looked into her eyes, and part of me wanted to believe, but the pain of betrayal was still strong. So, what do you want me to do? Pretend nothing happened? Pretend I didn't see what I saw? No, I want you to help me. We can face this together. The determination in her voice was undeniable, but I was still lost in my own feelings. Beatriz, I need time to think. As the words slipped out like a whisper. They were the truth I needed. The thought of distancing myself from her is painful, but I knew that for now, I would need space to understand what all of this meant. She nodded, the sadness weighing in every movement. I understand. I just hope you still want to help me when you're ready. I left the apartment with my mind in turmoil and my heart heavy. The walk home felt endless, and the city of London seemed like a labyrinth of voices and shadows. I was torn between the love I felt for Beatriz and the betrayal that now loomed over us like a storm about to break. The nights in London were illuminated by a mix of neon lights and stars, but I couldn't focus on anything but the conflict unfolding within me. Beatriz's revelation had left me reeling. She was a victim, not the criminal I had imagined. I needed to learn more about that mysterious man and his plan for revenge. I decided I wouldn't face this alone. At home, the glow of the computer screen reflected my determination. I researched everything I could about him, his ties to Beatriz's past, and soon realized he was closer than I could have imagined. The man I had seen meeting with her was not just an ex-partner. He was someone who had not given up on his criminal past. A tremor ran through my body as I understood that Beatriz was caught in a web of lies, and I needed to help her break free. The next day, I found Beatriz in a cafe in the city center. She looked paler than usual. Her eyes carried a weight I couldn't ignore. When we sat down, the tension was palpable. "Oliver, you look worried," she said, her voice trembling. "I found out who that man is," I replied, taking a deep breath. "He's using you. He wants revenge for something that happened in the past, and you're the key piece in his plan." Beatriz's eyes widened. "What do you mean? I have nothing to do with this." "I know, but he doesn't see it that way. He wants to manipulate you, and I can't let that happen. We need to do something," I declared. She nodded slowly, understanding growing on her face. "You're right. I thought I could handle this on my own, but I can't anymore. I'm scared. Oliver Kropka." The determination that had arisen in me now mixed with concern. "We're going to face this together. I won't let you go through this alone," I assured her, holding her hand. That afternoon, we devised a plan. We would use our enemy's own trap against him. Beatriz agreed to set up a meeting with the man, and I would hide, ready to record everything. The adrenaline coursed through our veins. It was a risky move, but there was no other option. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. My heart raced in my chest as I hid in a corner, watching Beatriz enter the designated location. The atmosphere was charged with tension, and I felt like an undercover agent in a spy movie. My phone vibrated in my pocket, and I answered Beatriz's message. "He's here." I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. I waited a few minutes before entering the place, with my phone camera ready to record. As soon as I walked in, I saw Beatriz talking to the man. He was looking at her with a smile that didn't convey sincerity. "Did you really think you could get rid of me?" he said with a threatening tone. "I'm not the same person you knew." "I'm not afraid of you," Beatriz replied, her voice steady, but the tension in her body was evident. That moment was crucial. It was my chance to act. With the camera rolling, I stepped out of the shadows and approached. "It's time for you to stop this," I declared, my voice loud enough to grab the attention of everyone in the place. The man turned, surprised. "What are you doing here, Oliver?" "I'm here to protect Beatriz." "You won't intimidate her anymore," I affirmed, pressing the button to record the conversation. Tension escalated, and the man looked at Beatriz, then back at me. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he growled. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," I replied defiantly. "And the police are already on their way." At that moment, the truth was being revealed. Beatriz looked at me, her eyes shining with gratitude. The man, realizing he had lost control, tried to leave, but it was too late. The police arrived swiftly, and with a quick move, they arrested him. When it was all over and the man was taken away, Beatriz and I found each other in a corner of the cafe. She was emotional, and I held her tightly. "Thank you for being here, Oliver. I couldn't have done it without you," she said, tears in her eyes. "I will always be by your side, Beatriz. We got through this together, and now we can start anew," I replied, looking into her eyes. With a shy smile, she leaned in, and before I knew it, our lips met. The kiss was passionate and full of promises as the city lights sparkled around us, symbolizing a new beginning for both of us, finally free from the shadows that haunted us.